The breathing came in pairs, 2 ragged wheezes, then silence, then again. Franklin Moore paused mid-step on the cracked asphalt of the abandoned industrial dump, his steel-toed boots crunching down over broken glass and shredded insulation. The beam of his old maglite swept slowly across a mountain of trash bags, casting long shadows over rusted refrigerator doors and busted sheetrock. He heard it again. That same breath, faint, labored, but unmistakably alive. Franklin adjusted the flashlight and took another step closer, knees complaining with every movement. The wind off the desert rolled in dry and sharp, carrying the sour smell of garbage and motor oil. He moved a pile of flattened boxes aside, then stopped cold. A paw, white, still, crusted with blood. Then another, and then the rest of her, twisted in a nest of black trash bags, legs bound with industrial zip ties, eyes covered in a black cloth, soaked in something dark. Her fur was matted and filthy, her ribs visibly caving in with each breath. He crouched, his old knees popping, and saw the note safety pinned to the blindfold. Too aggressive. Failed K9. Put her down yourself if you want. J. Franklin's jaw clenched. The dog didn't move, didn't twitch, but she was breathing. Barely. He knew that silence, knew what it meant. This dog had been taught to go still, to survive by vanishing in her own body, and someone had meant for her not to survive at all. He stood frozen for a moment, the wind tugging at his jacket. It was 5:15 in the morning. No one came out here but scrappers and the kind of folks who didn't want to be seen. He'd driven his dented Dodge out here hoping to score some copper wire for cash, just enough to cover his heart meds and gas for the week. But now, he had maybe 30 seconds to decide. Leave her. Or get involved. Again. God damn it! He muttered, and dropped to his knees. The dog didn't flinch when he reached for her. That bothered him more than if she had. He pulled out the old pocket knife clipped to his belt, unfolded the blade with one snap. The zip ties had cut deep, down into swollen tissue, the kind of injury that risked nerve damage or worse. His hands worked fast, precise, out of muscle memory from another life he didn't talk about much. He talked to her the whole time, voice low and steady. Easy, girl. I'm not here to hurt you. Not again. No reaction, not even a tremble. When he slid a hand under her side, the fur was wet, sticky. He couldn't tell how much was blood and how much was whatever filth she'd been lying in. But it was bad. The blindfold would have to go last. He needed her calm, and if she'd been trained the way he thought she had, sight could trigger panic. Instead, he reached down, careful, and lifted her front legs just enough to wrap his canvas jacket around her. She was lighter than she should have been. Maybe 55 pounds, tops. German shepherds her size should have been pushing 90. She let out a sound, one single whimper, then fell quiet again. Franklin pulled her in close, her head against his chest, and staggered to his feet. Every joint screamed, but he didn't care. The old truck sat just outside the gates. He'd covered the passenger seat in towels for junk hauling, but today it would carry something else. Inside the cab, the dog made no sound, but her shallow breathing filled the space like a drumbeat. He reached one hand over, rested it gently on her shoulder, and she didn't pull away. The road to the emergency vet was 20 minutes in early morning traffic. He made it in 15. The clinic was tucked between a vape shop and a used tire outlet. The windows were dark, but the neon sign flickered open in red. Franklin kicked the door open with his boot and shouted toward the front desk, "I need help! She's dying!" The young vet tech behind the counter didn't hesitate. Within seconds, hands were moving her onto a gurney, wheeling her through swinging doors. Franklin stood there, hands blood-stained, still clutching the note. One of the staff handed him a clipboard. "Name?" "I don't know," he said. Yours, sir. He blinked. Franklin Moore. And the dog's name? He looked toward the hallway she'd been rolled down. His throat worked once. Scout, he said. Call her Scout. The tech nodded and disappeared. The waiting room was bright and cold, and the only sound was the hum of the vending machine behind him. He sat down hard in a plastic chair and stared at the floor for what felt like hours. Finally, a woman in green scrubs stepped out, her eyes focused, face calm but serious. Mr. Moore, I'm Dr. Quinn. Scout is stable for now, but it's bad. He stood. Tell me. She's severely malnourished, anemic, and has multiple lacerations and deep tissue trauma. The zip ties cut through muscle. We also found evidence of burns. Older ones. And she's pregnant. Possibly 5 weeks. Franklin blinked. She's what? Dr. Quinn nodded. We don't know how many pups yet. We're doing everything we can, but she's in critical shape. He looked down at his hands. I don't have insurance, he said. Or money. Not enough. But do whatever she needs. I'll figure it out. The vet nodded slowly. We'll start with fluids and antibiotics. We'll see how she responds. He cleared his throat. Can I see her? Briefly. She led him to the ICU. Scout lay on a warming pad, IV lines running into her foreleg. Her side rose and fell too fast, too shallow. Her fur had been shaved in patches, revealing bruises in deep shades of purple and green. Franklin stepped forward. She turned her head slightly. Their eyes met. That was the moment everything changed. It wasn't fear, it wasn't trust either, it was something else. Recognition. As if she was memorizing his face, measuring his soul. Scout, he whispered. If you're willing to fight, I'll fight with you. She blinked once. Then her tail gave the tiniest twitch dot outside. The sky was turning orange with sunrise. Trash collectors would soon make their rounds, passing the dump without knowing what had almost died there. Franklin looked back once before stepping into the morning light. He'd gone looking for copper. Instead, he'd found something far more precious, something worth saving. Franklin didn't sleep that night. He tried. God knows he tried. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw that blood-matted fur, the way her ribs jutted like broken fence posts, the note. That damn note. Too aggressive. Failed K9. Put her down yourself if you want. Whoever wrote that didn't just mean to discard her. They wanted her erased. It was nearly sunrise when he shuffled back into the clinic, coffee in one hand, the other gripping the receipt from the pawn shop. He hadn't told Dr. Quinn yet, but the wedding ring he sold that morning had belonged to his late wife. 42 years of love, gone for $280. Not enough, but a start. The front desk nurse gave him a tired smile. She made it through the night, she said quietly. Vitals are up slightly. Franklin didn't say anything, just nodded once. Scout was in a recovery kennel in the back, wrapped in warm blankets, head resting on a small foam pillow. Her eyes followed him the moment he entered the room. I told you I'd be back, he whispered. Dr. Quinn entered a moment later, glancing down at her chart. She's stronger today, she said, kneeling beside the crate. Still not out of danger, but the fact she's eating, that's huge. She's eating. Tiny bits, mostly boiled chicken. She wouldn't take kibble, but the weird part is... Franklin raised an eyebrow. She won't eat unless someone's in the room with her. He turned back to Scout. You don't trust being alone anymore, huh? Scout didn't move, but the tip of her tail tapped once. Dr. Quinn leaned against the counter, arms crossed. There's something about her. I've seen abused dogs, aggressive dogs, traumatized dogs, but this one, she's different. She's waiting. For what? For someone. Franklin crouched beside the crate, letting her sniff his hand again. She licked it once, slow, deliberate. She's not just some backyard guard dog. He muttered. She's trained, probably federal. You see how she moves her head before she shifts her body? That's anticipation. Dr. Quinn looked at him curiously. You worked with dogs? Army. Then long-haul trucking. But yeah, I knew dogs. Had one back in the day. Saved my ass more than once. Scout reminds me of him. What was his name? Ghost, he said, almost smiling. Because he moved like one. Smart, too. Just like her. Scout blinked, slow and thoughtful. Franklin stood. You said she was pregnant? 4 to 5 weeks. That complicates everything. Can she carry them? Maybe. But the stress, the injuries, it's a gamble. Then we gamble, he said. He was halfway out the door when she called after him. We still need a name on the records. He paused. You already got it. Scout? He turned to face her, eyes steady. No, he said. Moore. Scout Moore. That afternoon, Franklin drove out to the mobile home park he'd called home for 12 years. The neighbors watched him curiously as he limped toward Lot 12A, where the porch sagged and the paint peeled like sunburned skin. Inside, he cleared off the kitchen table and laid out a pile of old photographs. His wife Marla holding their dog Ghost in a faded 1991 Polaroid, a young soldier version of himself kneeling next to a shepherd in desert camo, a crinkled receipt from the El Paso shelter dated 2009. He was looking for something. Anything. In the bottom of an old file box, he found it. A dusty manila envelope labeled Davis. D. Franklin paused. David Davis had been a friend from his army days, a fellow handler who'd gone into federal work afterward. They'd kept in touch a few years before drifting apart. Inside the envelope was a Christmas card from 2021. It had a photo, Davis in a windbreaker, kneeling next to a German shepherd with an all-too-familiar posture. It was Scout. Same intelligent eyes, same deep chest and posture. She looked younger, healthier, but it was her. The back of the card had a quick note. Still working. She's the best I've ever trained. Hope you're well, Frank. Let's catch up soon. Dated 6 days before Davis was reported dead in a single vehicle crash just outside Flagstaff. Franklin sat back in his chair, blood running cold. Scout had belonged to a federal agent, one who died under suspicious circumstances. And now, here she was, nearly dead in a dump with a note calling her a failed K-9. He grabbed his keys and rushed back to the truck. Dr. Quinn was surprised to see him again that night. She's been restless, she said as they walked toward the ICU, growling at the hallway door off and on. Somebody's coming, Franklin said flatly. What? Just trust me. That's not fear. That's alert. She's warning us. Scout was on her feet in the kennel when they entered, head high, tail rigid, growling low and steady at the back hallway. Franklin stepped forward and unlatched the crate. Easy now, he said. It's okay. She didn't move towards the door, but her ears didn't drop either. Dr. Quinn's radio crackled. Front desk to Dr. Q. There's a guy here asking about the German shepherd. Says he's with County Animal Control, but he doesn't have a badge. Franklin cursed under his breath. Buy me time, he said. Keep him talking. Dr. Quinn nodded and disappeared down the hall. Franklin reached into Scout's crate. You ready to move, girl? She didn't hesitate. When he opened the crate door, she stepped out with surprising control, still weak, but composed, and silent. They slipped through the side hall toward the storage wing, Scout limping beside him, moving low and tight to his leg. Good girl, he whispered. Real good girl. He found the back exit. It opened with a screech that made them both flinch. Scout stopped. Not out of fear. She was listening. Then she looked up at him, and for the first time, Franklin saw something spark behind her gaze. Not pain, not exhaustion. Resolve. He scooped her up gently and carried her to the truck. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he saw a man standing in the shadows by the dumpsters, pretending to smoke. No uniform, no badge, just watching. Scout growled. "That's what I thought," Franklin said. "They're still watching you, girl. Still trying to finish the job." Scout rested her head on his shoulder, eyes closing briefly. Whatever she'd been through, whatever they were trying to hide, this wasn't over. But Franklin Moore wasn't walking away. Not this time. By dawn, Franklin had parked his truck in the back lot of the only place he knew they could disappear for a while, behind an old mechanic's garage on the south edge of Tucson, the kind of place where no one asked questions if you didn't ask first. Scout lay curled up in the passenger seat, still wrapped in an old flannel blanket. Her head rested on her paws, breathing shallow but steady. She hadn't made a sound since they left the clinic. Not a bark, not a whimper. Just watched him. Always watching. Franklin sipped bitter black coffee from a styrofoam cup, scanning the dusty alley behind the garage. No movement, no sign of the man who'd been lurking behind the dumpsters the night before. They had time. Not much, but enough. He turned to Scout. "Let's see who you really are, girl." Her eyes followed his hand as he reached for the worn leather collar she'd still been wearing when he found her. It was stiff with grime, the buckle cracked, but something about it had bothered him since day one. It wasn't just old, it was heavy. He worked slowly, fingers tracing along the inside edge. And then, right near the buckle, he felt it. A seam. Franklin pressed gently, and a tiny section popped open with a soft click. Inside, wrapped in a layer of waxed paper, was a small military-grade USB drive. Waterproof, heat-resistant, government issue. He exhaled through his nose. Somebody wanted this gone. Scout lifted her head, ears pricked. She knew. She'd protected it, even after everything. Franklin nodded. You were holding on, for him. He stared at the drive. He had no idea what was on it, but if someone had gone to the trouble of nearly killing a dog to destroy it, it wasn't nothing. And that man at the vet's office hadn't come for Scout. He'd come for this. He wrapped it in a handkerchief and slid it into the glove box, right next to the revolver he hadn't touched in years. Then he turned back to Scout and ran his hand gently along her side. She flinched when he hit a certain spot behind her ribs. "Easy," he said. "It's okay." He lifted the blanket and looked closer. There, beneath the matted fur and bruising, was a faint scar. Clean, precise, surgical. Franklin frowned. "What the hell did they do to you?" Scout licked his wrist once, a gesture so calm it almost broke him. "You're tougher than most soldiers I knew," he said. His phone buzzed. Blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. "Franklin Moore," he said warily. The voice on the other end was female, low and urgent. "Don't hang up. I think you have something that belonged to my neighbor." There was a beat of silence. "I saw your truck at the clinic. The girl at the desk told me what happened. That shepherd, her name's Scout. She belonged to a federal investigator named Daniel Reyes. He lived next door to me." Franklin's grip tightened on the phone. "Reyes. Died 2 years ago. Car crash, right?" "That's what they said. But Daniel didn't drink. He didn't drive fast. And the night he died, he left me a voicemail. Said if anything happened to him, to find Scout. That she had the truth." Franklin looked at Scout, whose eyes had locked on his again. "What's your name?" he asked. Lena Garza. Please, can we talk in person?" He thought for a moment, then nodded. "Mel's Diner. 1 hour, come alone." He hung up without waiting for a response. The diner looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. cracked red vinyl booths, a jukebox stuck on Conway Twitty, and the smell of grease so thick it clung to your socks. Lena Garza sat in the corner, hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. She looked mid-40s, worn but sharp, with a nurse's badge still clipped to her scrubs and tired eyes that had seen too much. Franklin slid into the booth across from her. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Start talking." Lena took a deep breath. Daniel was working undercover. He was investigating something inside the K9 training program, something big. Dogs that didn't pass aggression tests were being labeled defective, failed out of the system. But instead of being rehomed, they disappeared. She paused. Scout was his partner, but also his cover. He said she was smarter than the whole damn squad combined. Franklin leaned back, letting that sink in. He said they were trying to turn the dogs into weapons. Lena continued. Illegally enhanced training. Shock methods. Drugs. Anything to create obedient, aggressive canines they could sell to private contractors. And when he got too close? Lena nodded. They made it look like an accident. His body was cremated before the autopsy was finished. I tried to ask questions. They shut me down fast. Told me if I didn't want trouble, I should forget him. Franklin rubbed his temples. You said he left a message. Lena pulled out her phone and pressed play. Daniel's voice came through, scratchy but unmistakably tense. If you're hearing this, it means I was right. They're covering it up. The collars, the dogs, they've got the evidence. Scout has everything. Don't trust local law. Go federal. And tell Frank Moore. Tell him I'm sorry. He was right. I should have listened. Franklin sat frozen. He hadn't spoken to Daniel in years. They'd had a falling out over a botched transfer in 2009. Never patched it up. And now the kid had died trying to do the right thing. Scout had been trying to find help. She'd survived torture, been left for dead, and still clung to life, because of a promise. Franklin swallowed hard. She's pregnant. He said quietly. Don't know how far along, but she fought through it, held on for him. Lena's hand covered her mouth. They're going to come for her again, aren't they? Franklin nodded. They already did. He pulled out the USB drive, wrapped in cloth, and placed it on the table. I think this is what Daniel died to protect. Lena reached for it, but he pulled it back. We don't trust anyone, he said. We find out what's on this, then we take it as far as we can. She nodded, slowly. Outside, the wind kicked up dust across the diner's lot. Scout sat in the truck, head high, eyes scanning the parking lot with unblinking focus. Inside, Franklin looked down at the drive again. He didn't know what they were stepping into, but whatever it was, Scout had already survived the worst of it. Now it was their turn. Franklin didn't go home. He drove to the edge of the desert, where the cell signal thinned and streetlights gave up. Scout lay curled in the back seat, ears twitching in sleep, her breathing rhythmic now, not labored like before. The sun was dropping fast behind the mountains, painting the sky in burnt orange and ash. In the passenger seat sat Lena Garza, laptop open, her fingers dancing over keys with steady purpose. They encrypted it. She muttered, eyeing the USB drive Franklin had handed her. Military-grade stuff. AES 256 with a bootloader lock. This wasn't some field agent's personal stash. Franklin watched the road. His thumb tapped the steering wheel in time with the rattling of the air vents. Can you get into it? Not alone, she said. I know someone. Franklin didn't like that. Anyone who helps us puts a target on their back. Lena didn't look up. She already has one. My cousin's daughter. She used to work cybersecurity for the Border Patrol. Got out after she found a few too many things she wasn't supposed to. Burned bridges. Started teaching coding to kids at the community center. Franklin snorted. Smart ones always end up on someone's list. Lena finally looked over. So do the stubborn ones. Scout shifted in her sleep, letting out a soft chuff like she'd heard the exchange and had an opinion. Franklin pulled off onto an abandoned service road and parked behind an old transmission shop that hadn't seen business in years. Windows were boarded, graffiti scrawled across the siding, but the back door opened with a creak when Lena pushed. Inside, it smelled of dust and oil, the air still holding a faint trace of burned rubber. Franklin laid out a blanket on the cleanest patch of floor he could find, coaxing Scout down onto it. She settled quickly, still alert but no longer on edge. "She trusts you," Lena said quietly. "She doesn't trust easy," Franklin replied. "Neither do I." Half an hour later, Lena's cousin's daughter arrived. She couldn't have been older than 23, with cobalt blue braids and a laptop covered in hacker stickers. Name was Camilla. No last name offered. She dropped cross-legged beside Lena like she belonged there and plugged in the drive. "Jesus," she said, eyes narrowing at the screen. "Someone really didn't want this cracked." "Can you do it?" Franklin asked. Camilla didn't answer at first. Her fingers moved fast, eyes darting between lines of code. Then she grinned. "I don't need to crack it. I just need the key." "What kind of key?" "Passphrase. It's not random. Whoever made this drive didn't trust a password generator. This is personal. Could be a date. A name. A memory." Franklin leaned back. "Try Marisol." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Daniel's sister." "No," Franklin said. "His dog before Scout. She died in training. First time I saw him cry." Camilla typed. The screen blinked. A folder tree appeared. Scout lifted her head. "Got it," Camilla whispered. They fell silent. The folders were labeled by dates and operations, videos, reports, scanned memos with blacked-out names. But some weren't redacted at all. Names stood out in bold: Captain Ryan Keller, Sergeant Beth Dunlow, Commander Harold Keene, and one more, Major Vincent Dre, U.S. Department of Defense Liaison to Private K-9 Contractor Ops. Franklin felt his stomach turn. He'd served with Dre. Had drinks with him in Ramstein. Trusted him. Camilla opened a video file dated 2 weeks before Daniel's death. The footage was grainy, taken with a hidden camera. Daniel's voice, low and steady, narrated over it. "These dogs are being failed intentionally. The ones who won't attack civilians or who freeze during aggressive commands are labeled liabilities. They're removed from the program, but they're not being euthanized legally. They're being sold." A cut to a warehouse. Crates, dogs whimpering, muzzles soaked in blood. Then another angle, a man pulling a struggling shepherd out by the neck. "That's not training," Franklin said, voice hoarse. "That's torture." Camilla opened another video. It showed Daniel placing the USB drive inside Scout's collar, petting her gently. "If anything happens to me, get her to someone who can finish this." The screen froze on his face. He looked exhausted, worn out but steady. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "Tell Frank, I should have listened." Lena looked away. Franklin didn't. Scout had stood up now. Not tense, but focused, as if she recognized the voice and knew what came next. "Where is this warehouse?" Franklin asked. Camilla clicked into another file. GPS coordinates. A map. Lena's voice was quiet. "That's near the old Sierra Verde training facility." Franklin cursed under his breath. "I've been there. That was shut down after the 2012 incident. Nobody was supposed to use it again." "Looks like someone did," Camilla said. Then her screen flickered. A warning popped up. Remote access attempted. Port breach detected. Camilla cursed and yanked the power cord from her laptop. "They're tracing it," she said. "You need to move, now." Franklin was already scooping up the drive. Lena grabbed the laptop. Scout followed without needing a command. Outside, the night had deepened. The desert air cooled fast, and the wind was rising. As they reached the truck, a pair of headlights flared to life 2 blocks down. No engine, no movement, just watching. "They found us," Lena breathed. Franklin didn't hesitate. He shoved the gear into drive, tires kicking up gravel. As they tore down the dark road, Scout leaned between the front seats, eyes trained on the lights behind them. And for the first time, she growled. Not fearfully, not angrily, with purpose. Franklin glanced at her, then back at the road. "You want to go back there, don't you?" Scout didn't blink, because she remembered. And whatever had happened in that facility, she wasn't done with it yet. The motel was the kind of place people didn't ask questions. A flickering vacancy sign buzzed overhead, casting harsh red light across the parking lot. Franklin had chosen it not for comfort, but for the back exit that led to an empty field, and the fact it didn't take ID if you paid in cash. He pushed open the room door with his shoulder, Scout cradled gently in his arms. She didn't resist, but she was heavier now, as if the weight of what she carried, inside and otherwise, had finally taken its toll. Lena trailed behind with Camilla, still clutching her laptop. "Okay, we've bought a few hours," Camilla muttered, closing the curtains. "But whoever pinged that signal isn't far behind." Franklin didn't answer. He knelt by the bed and set Scout down, brushing matted fur from her face. "She's warm," Lena said. "Too warm." Franklin pressed a hand to her side. Her breathing was fast, shallow. A fever. The wounds on her flank were inflamed, the scar from the old surgery bright red. "She's crashing," he said, voice low. "Infections flaring up." Lena moved quickly. "We need antibiotics. 4, not oral, and fast." "There's a vet hospital off Speedway," Camilla said. "One of the good ones. I used to bring rescues there." Franklin didn't hesitate. "Keep her warm. I'll be back." He left with the urgency of a man who knew what losing felt like and refused to do it again. The vet hospital's lobby was nearly empty when Franklin barged through the doors holding a duffel of cash and a look that meant business. The young woman at the desk started to speak, but the urgency in his voice silenced her. "German Shepherd. Female. Pregnant. High fever. I have antibiotics from my vet, but I need a sterile line and fluids." "You a vet?" the tech asked, unsure. "I've trained with them. She's dying." The vet on duty, a tall man with inked sleeves and tired eyes, appeared from the back. "What's her name?" he asked. "Scout," Franklin said. That was enough. 15 minutes later, he was back on the road, a plastic bag of meds strapped into the passenger seat and a bottle of saline tucked into the cooler. By the time he returned, Lena had laid Scout out on the bed, gently dabbing her head with cool water. Her eyes were half-lidded, her breathing worse. Franklin moved with precision, guided by old muscle memory and desperation. He found a vein and inserted the line, taping it down while Lena held Scout still. Camilla hovered near the door, watching through the peephole every few minutes. "Her fever's peaking," Lena whispered. Franklin sat down beside her, hand resting over Scout's paw. "You hear me, girl? I know you're tired. I know you've been through hell. But you didn't carry that drive across the desert to die in a cheap motel, did you?" No response. Not at first. Then, barely a flicker. Her ear twitched, her tail shifted a fraction. "She hears you," Lena said. Hours passed. The fluids dripped. The room stayed silent except for Scout's breathing and the slow tick of the wall clock. Then, at just after 3 a.m., Scout stirred. Not violently, not suddenly, just opened her eyes. She lifted her head slightly, sniffed the air, then turned her gaze to Franklin. He didn't speak, just smiled. "You came back," Lena said softly. But Scout wasn't looking at her. She was staring at something else, her own side. She licked once at the old surgical scar and let out a low, restless whine. "What is it?" Franklin asked. She pawed at the area, gently, not in pain, but insistently. Lena sat up straighter. "That's where the surgical scar is." "She wants us to see something," Franklin said. Scout whined again, louder this time. They rolled her carefully, exposing the patch of furless skin. The scar was clean, but bulged faintly, too firm to be inflammation. Franklin pressed gently. "That's not infection." He looked at Lena. "She's carrying something." They glanced at Camilla. "I have a portable ultrasound in my car," she said quickly. "I use it for rescue litters. I'll get it." 5 minutes later, they smeared gel over Scout's side and began scanning. They found the puppies first, 3 of them, alive and strong, their tiny hearts flickering like sparks on the screen. Then Lena pointed. "Wait, what's that?" In the shadowed space near the uterus, tucked between muscle walls, was something that didn't belong. A hard-edged silhouette, rectangular, metallic. "It's not organic," Lena said. Franklin exhaled slowly. They hit another drive. Camilla looked up. "Inside her?" "Inside her," Franklin confirmed. They knew the collar could be found. This was the real insurance. Scout looked up at him, her brown eyes clear now, sharp again. "You swallowed it, didn't you?" he said. Scout blinked once. Camilla whispered, "That's not just instinct. That's planning." "She protected it," Lena added, "even while they tried to break her." Franklin's voice cracked. "She didn't just survive. She adapted." Scout nudged his hand, and this time, when he took it, she didn't let go. By mid-morning, they'd sedated her slightly and guided the object out without surgery. It took care, patience, but it worked. Franklin cleaned the device with a shaky hand, then passed it to Camilla. "Back it up, then open it." This one wasn't encrypted. It opened to a single file, a video. Daniel Reyes stood in front of a dry erase board in what looked like a storage room. His face was gaunt, sleepless. Behind him were photos, financial records, maps, names. "I don't know how long I have," he said, "but if this gets out, they can't deny it. They've been running a black market program through Sierra Verde, training dogs for off-the-books military use. Dogs that don't question, that don't pause. They fail good dogs on purpose, break them, rebuild them as weapons." He paused. "They tried with Scout, but she wouldn't break. She's not like the others. She's loyal, smart, and too good to lose." Another pause. "If anything happens to me, it's because I got too close. Take this to someone who still believes in justice." He stared into the camera. "Take it to Frank Moore." Franklin sat frozen. Lena touched his shoulder. Scout, still groggy, rested her head in his lap. "You were the backup plan," Lena said. Franklin nodded, voice rough. "And now we finish what he started." Scout lifted her head again. This time, her tail thumped twice against the blanket. She was ready. The sun hadn't yet risen, but the air in the motel room was already tense, charged like the minutes before a storm breaks. Scout lay curled by the foot of the bed, alert but conserving energy, her belly rising and falling in steady rhythm. Franklin had pulled a chair close, one hand resting near her shoulder, just close enough for her to know he was there. Camilla was back on the laptop, quietly uploading the decrypted files from the second drive to a secure drop server in Canada. Lena paced, phone in hand, whispering to someone she trusted, someone in the local press. Small pieces of a bigger plan, all moving fast now. Scout's ears twitched, and she sat up fast. Franklin followed her gaze. A shadow moved past the window. He stood, already reaching for the revolver hidden in his duffel bag. "Get down," he said to Camilla. "Now." The girl obeyed without argument. Lena backed toward the bathroom, slowly, pulling Scout with her. The shepherd didn't resist. She understood the drill. Movement silent, body low. A second shadow appeared. This time, it paused. Franklin flicked the safety off his weapon, and then glass shattered. The door exploded inward. A man in black rushed through, no badge, no warning. Franklin fired once, grazing the man's arm, sending him stumbling backward. But behind him came another, taller, faster, who tackled Franklin to the ground. Scout barked once, a short, guttural warning. She lunged. Her teeth closed not on flesh, but on the padded sleeve of the attacker's jacket. She twisted with precision, dropping the man with a thud. He rolled to escape her hold, but Scout stayed on him, growling low, not biting to kill, but enough to warn, "You're done here." The second intruder scrambled back toward the exit, blood trailing from his shoulder. He yanked the dazed first man to his feet, and they both bolted through the door. Franklin staggered upright, panting, knuckles blooded. Lena stepped out from the bathroom, clutching Scout's leash, her face pale. "Who the hell were they?" Franklin didn't answer right away. He crossed the room, looked out into the lot, empty now, save for tire marks leading east. Then he turned back to Scout. "You didn't bite him," he said quietly. "You could have, but you didn't." Scout sat beside the overturned coffee table, tail still, eyes locked on Franklin. She held back. Lena said, "That wasn't hesitation, that was discipline." "She's still a working dog," Franklin replied, "still following rules even when nobody's giving them." Camilla peeked up from behind the bed, wide-eyed. "They didn't even speak," she said. "Just came in and went straight for the drives, didn't care who was in here." "They weren't here to scare us," Franklin said. "They were here to erase everything." Scout let out a low grumble and walked toward the laptop, sniffing it. Then she looked at Franklin. "You think they knew we uploaded the files?" Camilla nodded slowly. "Yeah, or they knew we would." Lena looked out the window, scanning the parking lot. "We can't stay here. They'll regroup and come back. Next time they won't miss." Franklin nodded, grabbing the backup USB and sliding it into a metal pillbox he clipped to his belt. "I've got one more place," he said. "Quiet, secure, but it's gonna cost us." "More than your life?" Lena asked. Franklin didn't answer, just whistled once. Scout was already by the door. The place was a storage unit 2 towns over, technically abandoned, but Franklin had kept the keys when the lease lapsed years back. No paperwork, no cameras, just rusted roll-up doors and desert wind. He drove in silence, eyes checking the mirror every 20 seconds. Scout lay stretched across the back seat. Not asleep, not tense, just waiting. Like she knew something was about to break. Camilla connected to the laptop's hotspot as soon as they stopped. "I uploaded the bulk of the data," she said. "But that last video, the one with names and wire transfers, it didn't go through." Franklin tensed. "You have it locally?" "Yes, but..." "What?" Camilla pointed to the screen. "It's corrupted. Someone tried to wipe it remotely mid-transfer." Lena exhaled sharply. "Can you recover it?" "I can try, but I'll need time." "We don't have time," Franklin said. "We need insurance." He turned to Scout. "Can you take us back?" She tilted her head, ears twitching. "To Sierra Verde," he said. "You remember it, don't you?" At the name, Scout's body stiffened. Her tail dropped low, not in fear, something colder. Recognition. Pain. She stood, slow but sure, walked over to Franklin, and pressed her head gently into his side. "She'll take you," Lena said softly. "But if we're going back there, we need help." Franklin stared out the windshield. I know one guy, a ranger. Served with Daniel once. He's still with Border Patrol. Off the books, but loyal. You trust him? Lena asked. No, Franklin replied. But Scout did. That's enough for me. That night, in the glow of a portable lantern, Scout refused to sleep. She paced slowly, eyes on the door, ears rotating at every sound. Franklin watched her, jaw tight, heart heavy. She's preparing, Lena said, for whatever's next. She knows we're walking into the fire. She's not afraid. Franklin looked at her. Number. But she remembers. He sat down beside Scout, placing a hand gently on her back. She leaned into it, just for a moment. You're not done yet, he whispered. Scout lifted her head, eyes clear, locked on his. Not done, not broken, and definitely not alone. The road to Sierra Verde wasn't marked on most maps. What used to be a military K-9 training base had officially shut down 2 years earlier after a whistleblower exposed misuse of federal funds. Unofficially, the compound still buzzed, its purpose just shifted underground. Franklin had watched the place rot from inside out. Now he was coming back, not with a badge or a team, but with a dog they'd once thrown away. Scout sat in the back seat, posture alert, breathing calm. Her eyes never left the horizon as Franklin's truck bumped along the gravel road through the empty New Mexico scrub. You sure this is the right way? Camilla asked from the passenger seat, laptop open on her lap. I'm not sure of anything. Franklin muttered. Except she knows. Scout let out a soft, low grunt. It wasn't impatience. It was acknowledgement. Lena leaned between the seats. How close are we? Franklin nodded toward a rusted chain-link fence about 50 yards out. That close. He killed the engine. The truck came to a gentle stop beneath a dead mesquite tree, its twisted branches casting a jagged shadow across the dust. We go on foot from here. Franklin popped the glove box and pulled out a pair of compact binoculars. He scanned the perimeter. No movement. But the quiet was too intentional, like a forest right before a lightning strike. Lena checked her weapon. What exactly are we walking into? A place where dogs were taught to forget they had hearts, Franklin said, stepping out. And one dog who never did. The group moved low and fast across the dirt, weaving between scrub brush and debris. Scout led, nose to the ground, pausing only when she hit the old scent trails. Her tail moved in tight arcs, scanning, signaling. The closer they got, the more she slowed. And then she froze. One paw lifted, ears back. A faint growl rumbled in her throat. Franklin stopped instantly. What is it? Scout backed up one step, gaze fixed on a mound of dry leaves just off the fence line. Franklin moved forward and gently nudged the pile with the barrel of his rifle. Underneath, half buried in dirt, was a motion sensor. Tripwire, he muttered. Scout had saved them again. Camilla exhaled sharply. They rigged the approach. Lena crouched beside the trap. This isn't for animals. It's calibrated for human weight. Franklin nodded. They're expecting company. He looked at Scout. Take us another way. She turned without hesitation, doubling back along a narrow arroyo, nose to the wind. They reached a break in the fencing, an old access road long since overgrown. Scout paused, then ducked through. The others followed into the dark. The facility loomed ahead, its concrete walls weathered but intact. Franklin recognized the old intake yard, the field where they'd run bite drills, the kennels built for training, and control. Scout stopped abruptly, her head turned toward a dim light flickering through a narrow window in the main building. Franklin's voice dropped to a whisper. She knows where they're keeping the others. Others? Camilla asked. She wasn't the only one that passed the threshold. The ones who resisted, some were kept. Others were reset. You think there are more like her? Lena asked. I hope not, he replied, but I'm betting someone's still trying. They breached the building through a cracked service door. The hallway inside smelled of bleach and rust. Cameras hung dead on the walls, but Scout didn't trust it. She moved cautiously, tail down, her paws silent on the tile. They turned a corner and froze. A man stood ahead, tall, lean, armed, not uniformed, no insignia. He didn't raise his weapon, just looked at Scout. His face changed. Recognition. You again, he said, voice low. Scout's body tensed. Deep growl rose in her chest. She stepped in front of Franklin, posture rigid. The man smirked. You should have stayed in the desert. Scout didn't lunge, didn't snarl. She did something else, something Franklin had never seen. She barked once, short, precise. From down the hallway, another bark answered, then another. Camilla gasped. They're still here. Doors began to rattle. One bark turned into three, then a chorus. Kennels, dozens. Franklin looked around wildly. They kept them all. Scout bolted, skidding down the corridor until she reached a steel door. She pressed her nose to the seam and whined. They're locked in, Lena said, rushing forward. Cover me, Franklin said. He knelt beside the panel, pulled a lockpick kit from his vest. Sweat dripped down his neck. The dog's barking filled the air like a heartbeat. The man started to step forward, but Scout moved into his path. No growl this time, just a steady stare, unwavering. He raised his gun, then lowered it again. She didn't flinch, and for a second, just a second, his hand shook. Franklin snapped the lock. The door swung open. Inside were cages, dozens, each holding a dog, German shepherds, Malinois, labs, all trained, all scarred, and all staring at Scout. She stepped forward slowly, walked the line of cages, tail held high, body calm. She barked again, firm, commanding. The barking stopped. Silence filled the room. Then one dog sat, then another, until they all did. Camilla whispered, She's leading them. Franklin didn't move. She always was. Lena opened the side bay doors, and one by one, the cages were opened. The dogs emerged quietly. No chaos, no frenzy. Scout herded them calmly, watching each one, nudging the nervous, standing firm with the bold. As they loaded the first group into an old transport truck they'd found behind the compound, Franklin looked back at the man still standing in the hall. Who's in charge now? He asked. The man didn't answer, didn't need to. Scout walked past him last, head high. He stepped back, not from fear, from shame. Outside, under the pale moon, Scout stood in the truck's open ramp, watching the horizon. Lena came up beside her. You came back for them. Scout looked up, then turned her gaze forward again. Waiting. Watching. Franklin placed a hand on her back. Not done yet, girl, but we're close. She thumped her tail once, and didn't blink. The desert wind picked up as the sun dipped behind the low hills, casting Sierra Verde in a strange golden hush. The transport truck rumbled quietly toward the main gate, its cargo of rescued dogs calm, eyes bright, tails still. Scout rode in the front seat beside Franklin, ears up, gaze fixed ahead like she had memorized every mile of this return journey. But the exit wouldn't be easy. As they approached the perimeter road, Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then cursed under her breath. They know. Drone just went up from the ridge. They're watching us. Which side? Franklin asked, gripping the wheel tighter. North, probably waiting for us to cross the wash. There's a bottleneck there. Franklin looked at Scout. She stood, not just alert, deciding. The truck slowed as they neared the narrow dirt bridge over the wash. Nothing but broken wood planks and steel mesh connecting the compound to freedom. On the other side, headlights flashed once. A warning. Or a dare. Franklin pulled to a stop. "We can't outrun them," Lena said. "They'll fire if we cross." Camilla sat quietly in the back, hand resting on a crate, eyes locked on Scout. "She's not sitting still." Scout jumped from the seat, pacing, nose pressed to the side window. Her body moved with quiet urgency, less panic, more instinct. Franklin reached for the door handle. "Open the rear gate," he said. Lena blinked. "What?" "She's telling us something." He opened his door and stepped out. Scout leapt down beside him. No leash, no command, just purpose. She trotted to the back of the truck, nudging the latch. "You want them out?" Franklin asked softly. Scout turned to look at him, then barked once, sharp, then again. A rhythm, a pattern. "They trained them for crowd control," Franklin said. "If they move together, it's like smoke, distraction." Scout stood by the ramp, waiting. Franklin took a breath, then opened the crate doors. The dogs emerged one by one, calm but focused, falling in behind Scout as if rehearsed. "You think this is going to work?" Lena asked. "I think we let her lead." Franklin crouched and spoke gently. "You take them west, through the arroyo. We'll draw the heat." Scout didn't blink, just walked to the front of the pack, then glanced back once. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "One last command, girl." "Go," she bolted, not in panic, but with mission-like grace. The other dogs followed, weaving through scrub and stone like shadows. Within seconds, they were gone. The first bullet cracked overhead. Franklin hit the dirt, shouting, "Move!" Lena spun the wheel, jerking the truck towards the gate. Camilla ducked, arms shielding her laptop as glass shattered above her head. Tires screamed as the truck lurched forward. On the ridge, silhouettes darted through brush. Two men shouted, but they weren't firing anymore. They were looking, pointing. The dogs had made it past them. Scout's distraction had worked. At the base of the hill, Franklin stopped the truck just long enough to fire one shot into the air. Then he threw it in reverse, spinning the wheel towards the old fire road. They escaped in the chaos. 2 hours later, they found Scout at the rendezvous point, a dry creek bed littered with mesquite. She stood atop a rock, her pack seated around her like soldiers at rest. She wasn't panting. She wasn't tired. She was waiting. Franklin walked up slowly. "You did it," he said. Scout stepped down and pressed her head into his chest. He knelt beside her, silent, eyes closed. Behind them, Camilla was already calling a contact at the Albuquerque Times. Lena began recording names, numbers, scars, every identifier of every dog they'd recovered. Franklin didn't speak again that night, but as he sat beside Scout under the stars, watching her fall asleep with the others curled around her, he finally exhaled. She hadn't just survived. She'd led them out. And whatever came next, she had already written her legacy, with silence, with instinct, and with unwavering loyalty. The morning after the escape smelled like rain, even though the sky stayed dry. They had taken shelter in a run-down ranger station off Highway 60, half buried in the base of a mesa. There were no cameras, no cell signal, and for the first time in days, no running. Scout sat by the broken screen door, watching the dirt path with the stillness of a soldier guarding her post. Her body relaxed, but her eyes missed nothing. Inside, Franklin leaned over a folded map, tracing a line with a pencil. Camilla typed quietly beside him, building a dossier. Names, breeds, prior assignments, where each dog had come from. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming. Lena poured coffee into a tin mug and slid it across the table. "You slept 2 hours." "That's all I needed," Franklin said, sipping without looking up. "We have the proof now, Camilla's files, the microchip scans, the recovered records, and the dogs." she added. "They're the story." He nodded slowly. "But it's not over." A sharp knock echoed through the station. 3 quick raps. Franklin froze. Camilla's hand hovered above her laptop. Scout didn't move. She simply stood, walked to the door, and stared. Franklin stepped over cautiously and opened it. An older man stood on the porch, grey hair, desert-tanned skin, civilian clothes. But his posture, his gaze, the absence of fear, all military. "I heard you had a dog," the man said quietly. "A good one." Franklin didn't answer. The man extended his hand. "Name's Richard Klein, retired colonel. You and I have people in common." He gestured toward Scout. "And I trained her mother." Franklin blinked. Klein stepped inside. "I saw the files. Camilla sent them last night to an old channel we used to run intel cleanly. I've read enough. What you pulled off out there, it changes things." "You saying we're safe?" Lena asked, arms crossed. "I'm saying you stirred a hornet's nest." Klein replied. "But you might have also woken the right people." He walked over to Scout, knelt gently. "She looks like Lyra. Same stare, same spine." Scout didn't growl. She moved forward and touched her nose to his hand. "She remembers," Klein whispered. Franklin leaned on the table. "We need the right eyes on this. A real platform, not just a headline that fades in a day." "I've already sent it up the chain," Klein said. "To people who remember what working dogs are for, and who've spent their lives making sure they weren't turned into weapons." He stood, straightened his coat. "But this part's up to her." He pointed to Scout. "She's the face of it now. The one they dumped, tied, blindfolded, left to die." Franklin looked over at her. She was back at the door, watching again. Always watching. "We'll take her to D.C., Lena said suddenly. "Public hearing, congressional review." Franklin turned to her. "You think they'll care?" Lena smiled faintly. "They won't care about us, but they'll care about her." That night, as the wind picked up and howled around the edges of the old station, Franklin stepped outside. Scout followed, pressing close to his side. The stars were sharp. The kind of sky that only shows up after a fight. "She saved them," he said quietly. "She saved us." Scout didn't move, but she rested her head against his thigh. A silent yes. And across the empty plains, for the first time since that day in the landfill, Franklin finally let the weight fall from his shoulders. Scout had once been forgotten. Now the world would know her name. The hearing room in Washington was packed tighter than Franklin expected. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters murmured into lapel mics, and aides scribbled notes with mechanical focus. But none of them were the reason people were watching. Scout sat beside him, calm, her ears slightly tilted forward. No vest, no muzzle, no chain. Just a soft leather collar with a single tag. FR7321, her working ID, no longer hidden. At the front of the chamber, a senator adjusted her glasses and leaned toward the mic. "Mr. Walker, can you state again how you found the dog known as Scout?" Franklin cleared his throat. "She wasn't found," he said. "She found us." There was a pause. The senator blinked. She was left in a dump, tied, blindfolded, bleeding, with a note taped to her body saying, "Do not resuscitate." She should have died there, but she didn't. She survived. And she led us to others like her. Dogs used, discarded, trained into silence. Until one of them barked back. Gasps echoed faintly through the room. On screen, behind the panel, images cycled silently. Scout's initial condition, the other dogs in recovery, footage of the compound raid. Then came the video from the Arroyo, the night of the escape. You couldn't see her clearly, but the silhouette was unmistakable. Leading, not running, Not hiding. Fighting back. The senator leaned back. "And what do you want us to do with this information?" Franklin glanced at Scout, then said, "Don't bury it." He looked straight at the cameras. "Don't let a story get washed out by the next headline. Don't let this be one more incident. We owe these dogs more than silence. We owe them visibility, protection, dignity." Camilla stood from the gallery, holding up a copy of the full report. "We're proposing the Scout Act, a federal mandate for transparency in retired military and federal K-9 programs. No more unmarked dumps, no more blacked-out training logs." Applause broke out in one corner of the room. Scout didn't flinch, she simply watched. Later that afternoon, Franklin and Lena sat with her on the Capitol lawn, surrounded by children who had gathered during a school field trip. One girl offered Scout a peanut butter cracker. She took it gently, then placed her paw in the girl's lap. "She trusts again," Lena whispered. Franklin nodded. "And now it's our turn." As the sun dipped behind the marble dome, Scout lay down in the grass, her head on Franklin's boot. They had walked through fire together. Now they stood in the light. And somewhere, someone watching would remember her. Someone would see their own dog differently tonight. Someone would whisper, "Good girl," with a little more reverence, because Scout wasn't just saved. She saved. If Scout's story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to German Shepherd, where real stories of loyalty, survival, and silent heroes are brought into the light. Because behind every bark, there's a truth waiting to be heard. What's your story with a loyal pet? Tell us in the comments below. We're listening.